Welcome, everyone.
Hi. There is great hope.
It's Doug and Janet Newberry. Good evening.
We haven't seen you on Facebook Live in a week or two, at least.
Yeah.
And it's not Monday night. It's Sunday night.
Yeah. And it's also the first day without daylight savings time. And,
so you may already be sleeping. We don't know.
And we are time travelers, so we're so messed up we have no idea what time it really is. But
we do know today we moved from Marina, California to San Jose. I'm excited. I'm attending the Leverage Conference tomorrow and Tuesday and Wednesday. And last week we weren't able, I don't know where we were last week that we couldn't do a Facebook Live, but I know that we couldn't do a Facebook Live last week. And we started a new series in our Brave Love podcast. And hi Dean, hi Terry. And we wanted to do a Facebook Live every week because this is an important series. This is the series that's called Why Can't My Kids Just Behave?
And that title came from?
We had dinner when we were in Arroyo Grande. We had dinner with Rosie McKinney and Mark, her husband, and they have two delightful young boys. And at the end of our great evening with them, we had gone to the beach and we came home and had dinner with their family, had great conversation at the table. And before we left, we asked them, if we could answer one question for you on the Brave Love podcast, what would it be? And Mark's answer came just like that, just immediately came from his mouth. Why can't my boys just put on their shoes? I mean, just like so desperate. I get it. We've all been there, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing that Rosie said that was so powerful is, why does this parenting thing happen? It feels so lonely. Why are we so alone in this parenting thing? And so we started this new series on the Brave Love podcast. Tune in this Wednesday. Go to iTunes or whatever way you access. Go to janetnewberry.com. You can access the podcast there. But the new series will start on Brave Love. And you're going to get the introduction this week that we're not giving you tonight on Facebook Live. We're just going to zip through and give you a quick overview and then dig in to
part two.
Part two, which is called What If Be Good Is Not the Goal? But you want to tell them about the overview real quick?
Yeah, the overview from Why Can't My Kids Just Behave was what won't work and what will work.
We talked about parenting
by default, which is just stepping out the way we always have and doing what the world says is the right way to go about doing it.
Often false traditions that we don't even know are false. They're not rooted in truth. They're just the way that everybody else is doing things.
And it's a pacifier. It gets you through to the next challenge. Maybe not the day. Yeah. But what will work, parenting by design. And
one of the things that we talk about in parenting by design is the topic of this. I'm laughing because if you hear our dog drinking water, yep, Rowdy decided he's thirsty. So pardon that in the background.
And we had to kill a fly before this because
he'll always catch it. He'll go on the hunt. But one thing that does work in parenting by design is when parenting by default aims at the target of be good. It aims at the target of performance. Parenting by design aims at a completely different target. Childhood is not a season of measuring up. Childhood is the season of growing up. Right. It is the season we get to do that. We get to grow up. And so aim at the target of maturity. And often we don't even know what that means. And so we're going to unpack that a little bit today. And something interesting happened. Well, let's read the takeaway.
Yeah, let's do the takeaways from part one.
Yeah.
The first one was behavior is a fruit. Bad fruit can't be fixed. Bad behavior can't be fixed either.
Tune in to Brave Love on Wednesday. You're going to hear more of this. The second takeaway is behavior is the combined result of a lot of things. It's the combined result of our beliefs and our values, our habits, our affections, relationships, our unresolved issues, and our maturity.
Third one is behavior this one really sticks with me because, well, you'll see. Behavior that is controlled today will need to be controlled tomorrow. Control doesn't build trust or maturity. let's be tired building trust and maturity instead of damaging those we care about.
Ugh.
Yeah.
What you control today, you will need to control again tomorrow. But if we aim at the target of maturity, mature children put on their shoes. And so back to Mark's question, why can't my boys just put on their shoes? Because, you know what, I was thinking about this, that we always put the things that we can't do, that are hard for us, that we don't like to do, we always put those last. Anybody else put those things last on their list? And for boys, that might be put on their shoes. And so we want them to do it first, and they're putting it last because they don't want to do that. That's the thing that they don't enjoy. Because they're immature, they're growing up, and they need our help.
They will eventually learn how to put on their shoes.
Right. But we have to choose in this moment. Are we going to try to control their behavior? Are we going to require that they be good? Or are we going to help them grow up so that tomorrow we don't have to control their behavior again?
Yeah.
Right? Because you don't want to have to put on their shoes every day for them. You don't want it always to be a battle. And so here's the fun thing, the fun adventure we get to go on together as parents, is we get to help our kids grow up, which is a totally different goal than help them be good. And something really cool happened when we went whale watching the other day. That has everything to do with this Facebook Live topic.
Well, besides the whales were everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's just, they're such amazing creatures. But how many times have you seen signs that just something like, please don't feed the wildlife? Mm-hmm. And, you know, you're going, okay, well, that...
Don't feed the squirrels.
Don't
feed the sea lions.
Don't
That's
feed
what
the ducks.
we saw, you know?
Yeah, don't feed, whatever. But it's always thought of it just, that's a rule. And it's probably, I don't know, it wasn't a big deal, but people do it anyway. And so we didn't realize that there was a comma there, and there's another part to that sentence. And the wildlife biologist that was giving the tour was saying you don't, because it was sea otter. No, it was sea lions.
There were sea lions that were like gathering around the boat, and she said this isn't their natural behavior. They're not made to do that, but they're curious creatures. But somebody has probably fed them.
Yeah.
And then she said the magic phrase, and Doug and I we
looked at each other. They were not intended. This changes who they are.
This changes their behavior. When we feed the animals that are not meant to be fed by humans, it changes their behavior. It changes who they are. And we began to play with this idea over the last few days about, here's this little group of sea lions that doesn't swim free in the ocean. They just huddle around this boat hoping somebody will throw them a crumb. Yeah, they're not living the life that God created them to live. They're just hoping for the next shiny thing, right? And we talked about it because there were people, we passed people in the marina and stuff that were, there was a man that said, I won't lie, would you give me money for a beer? And we were talking about that. We've all seen those signs, and we all have been that man. Maybe not literally, but we're just begging for the next shiny thing. We're begging for the next reward. And to think about, don't feed the wildlife because it changes the life that they were designed to live. That's just a powerful idea when we think about our own children. Because Romans 12:2 says this, do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And when we aim at the target of be good, and we aim at the target of perfection, when we aim at the perfection that the law requires, we are being conformed, and we are conforming our children to a very tiny box, a very small world. We're like keeping those sea lions or those little sea otters tucked in this tiny little harbor, and they'll never go explore the big world.
So they're living a less than life, less than what they were created to be.
Yes.
And we do it with our children as well.
They're not experiencing the transformation. Love is a supernatural transforming agent. And they're not experiencing the transformation that is maturity. They're just stuck living for the shiny things. I saw this when we were having this discussion over the past few days. I saw this quote by Zach Maldonado, and I asked him for permission, and we shared this on the Brave Love podcast that will air in 2 weeks. And it says this, because it goes with this whole idea of, are we trying to be good? Are we trying to ask our children to be good? Or are we being transformed by God's love? Because God gives us a pattern for parenting our children. And Zach's quote says this: God is not giving us laws to lead us. Instead, he is asking us to trust in his lead. The law says try, but Jesus says trust. And that's the difference between the old covenant and the new. The law could tell you how to live, but had no power to enable you to live it. Jesus simply tells us to trust him, and he enables us to live. This is our pattern for parenting. We can tell them to be good. We can tell them today to put on their shoes. We can tell them tomorrow to put on their shoes. And in their immaturity, they will not have the power to do it on their own. It is only when they let us love them, and this may mean this is only when they let us help them and remind them who they are and remind them that they're growing up. And so we want them to act like themselves. We don't want them to be good. I want to say that again. We want them to act like themselves. We want them to know who they are, not just know what it means to be good. Because if I'm an 8-year-old little boy, I know who I am and I know how to put on my shoes and I can act like that. And so this whole idea of being conformed to the pattern of the law is what it means to tell our children to be good. But the idea and the hope of transformation is aiming at the target of maturity and building a relationship with them that they'll let us love them and they'll let us lead them and they'll trust us when we say it's time to put on your shoes.
How do we know if we're living a less than life? And how do we know if we're parenting our kids in a less than way?
And honestly, I started brainstorming about this, and I have about 20 things that we could share with you, but we've narrowed it down to about 4 or 5 on this. How do we know if we're living a less than life, or if our children are stuck in that? And here's one thing that you can look for to notice in yourself or in your children. I live to please and to be pleased. And I ask others to please me, and I live to please so that I can get what I want.
And so where's your identity in that?
Right.
It's
lost.
Yeah. He takes the shape of an amoeba and changes for whatever shape is called for at that particular moment.
And worse than my identity being lost is that God's identity is lost in that. When I am living to please, I think God needs to be pleased. And only my trust pleases him. And so God's identity is lost when we are living to please. Our children will never know the truth about who God is if we require them to please instead of trust.
All right, how about no grace? I get what I deserve, what I earn, and so do you.
That's another way to tell that we're living a less than life, is we only get what we deserve, and our children only get what they earn, and so do you. Ugh.
Yeah.
We would not be living this crazy adventure of a life right now if we had been required to earn and deserve this. This is nothing but a trusting God adventure for us.
Yeah.
I would love to tell you more of that story maybe later, but we are not doing this because we earned or deserved it.
Another example of less than life: apathy, rebellion, and addiction.
Anybody have apathetic children? Rebellious children?
Where nothing is satisfied. Nothing.
Right. Because they're living for the shiny things, right? We have convinced them, if you do this, you get that, which unintentionally teaches them that that is supposed to satisfy, and that this is just something I endure until I get the prize. And so now I'm addicted to the prize, or I may be rebellious because now I don't trust you because I'm really not satisfied in all the ways that you've required me to comply, or I just don't care.
Yeah. I don't have any boundaries. They're not clearly defined, and they're not clearly, because my identity is not clearly defined, there's no boundaries to be seen.
If I'm a pleaser, I don't know who I am because that's not my true identity. If I don't know who I am, I don't know my boundaries. And I don't know who you are, and I don't know your boundaries either. And so here's the last thing that we'll say about how do you tell if you're living a less than life. Anybody ever get triggered? Your kids know to push your buttons. We could name all of those buttons with one word, and that's shame, right? I learned to trigger your shame to get what I want, but I can't earn, right? You're not going to give it to me unless I trigger your shame button. And then maybe because you're feeling ashamed, you'll give in and give me what I want.
I'm smiling because I got triggered so big today. And she's like, yeah, you did.
Yeah, sometimes it happens, especially on moving day. Checking into new RV parks gives lots of reasons to get triggered.
It really does. And I did, and I admit it. But
so how do we know if we're living the life like not tucked into the little harbor waiting for the shiny things? Like we've been tricked into believing this perform and earn, and we're not living the life that God created us to live. We're not living life by design. How do we know? Does that life look like?
Well, let's look at the other side of the rock, because there's hope. There is a good side of this. Mm-hmm. I live a life of integrity, not manipulation.
I make my choices based on who I am. And I let you make choices based on who you are.
Regardless of the circumstances you're in, your identity does not change. You can put on a mask and be something else, but that's
not life by design.
No, but your identity does not change. Act out of your identity, not out of manipulation or
I put on my shoes because it's who I am as a person, as a child, right? When I turn off this Facebook Live, I have a chart to make and turn into my agent. I do my work because that's who I am. I get to make decisions based out of integrity, not out of guilt, not out of shame, not out of manipulation.
It's because it's who you are.
Mm-hmm. And here's another thing that tells us we're living life by design, and that our children, we want to look for this in our children's lives too. We get to have relationships of trust, and it's safe to ask for help when we struggle. And it's always a gift in those relationships because we are protected from the shame that wants to tell us lies when we struggle.
And who protects us from this shame?
Our relationships of trust in a life by design.
We have to have a community of people. Parenting in isolation or in a echo chamber, which is a small group of like-minded people who just feed off of each other.
Right. It's safe for me to tell you who I am, but you're not going to help me.
Yeah.
You're not going to tell me, hey, guess what? I think you were just triggered just then.
All right. The third that we want to bring up is I know who God is, and I know He is good, and I know that He is for me.
This is probably my favorite. I know who God is when I live life by design, because I'm not trying to please Him. Instead, I'm trusting Him. And what I'm trusting Him for is for Him. I'm trusting that He'll love me. And I get to figure out all the ways that I get to experience God's love today. And wow, He does nothing but love, and we get to experience it. We get to know who God is, and that He's not requiring us to be good. He wants us to trust who He says we are. He's asking us, will you just be you? I know you're growing up. I know you're going to struggle. Will you just be you? I'm not worried about you being good right now. I'm worried. I want you to know who you are. I want you to be you.
My favorite part of that is He is for you. It's not like you're running off down the road by yourself and He sticks His leg out to trip you. He is for you. He wants to work these things with you.
So let's go back to the little boys and not putting their shoes on in the morning. They're 6 and they're 8 years old. Is that a pain? Of course it is. It's a real struggle, right? Here's the important question. Do our kids know we are for them? That putting on their shoes is a good thing. It's who they are. It's really important. It's not about pleasing. We're going to help them. do they know we're for them? That's the whole important part about the shoes. Like, do I have the kind of relationship? And this often happens in the 99% of the time that you're not hassling over getting them to be good in that moment, right? In your relationship with your children, do they know that you are for them? Because that's what, and that's what we get to model in our relationship with God. We know He's for us.
And living a life by design, also, I am free to live a life of purpose and impact and influence.
I could never go on this trusting God journey and live a life of purpose if I was trying to be perfect. Man, everything we have done in this trusting God adventure, from building a website to building online classes to starting a podcast, we don't have a clue. We don't really know what we're doing on Facebook Live, but we're learning. And God says, that's okay. I'm not requiring you to be good. I'm asking you to trust me. I'm saying, will you follow me? Will you learn with me? And that's what we want our children to do too, because if we're asking them to be perfect, their world's going to have to stay pretty small, and they're never going to get to experience the deep fulfillment of living a life of purpose. Doug's looking for a quote right now in one of our favorite books, and I'll put a little plug in for our website. If you, one of the ways that we get a tiny bit of income is from Amazon affiliates. If you go to janetnewberry.com and you find my favorite things page, you're going to see this book, if you don't already have it, The Cure in Parents. Anytime you buy anything, starting with one of those links, we get it. It doesn't cost you anything more, but we get a tiny bit of money to John 15 Academy. So there's just a little plug. But read that quote that we found.
This book is a great guide. It's real life, written by people that have had children, have walked this road, and have researched these
And it's
ideas.
about maturity, not perfection.
So anyway, this one quote, it's on bottom of page 92. It said, "The motivation of grace will always bear greater fruit than the coercion of demand. It's messy and exceedingly time-consuming, but strained relationships between children and parents are even messier, more time-consuming and less effective, satisfying, and enjoyable." So it's hard. Parenting without manipulation is a struggle. It's hard to do, but the results that come out of that are powerful, and they will change your family.
Yes. So these are our 3 takeaways for this Facebook Live. What does Brave Love have to say about how do I get our children to behave? Right? You want to give number 1?
Number 1, requiring our children to be good. Our relationships with them will focus on measuring, comparing, controlling, fixing, and manipulating. And their relationship with us will focus on striving, hiding, rebelling, complaining, or blaming.
Mm-hmm. Helping our children grow up means teaching them who they are, who we are, and who God is. Our relationship with them gets to focus on building trust and loving them well and staying connected in relationship.
Last one, and it goes, if I get older without knowing my true identity, I will be tempted to work for love, go it alone,
equally
or I will live a life less than I was created to enjoy because I'm not experiencing love.
So we'll just sum this whole Facebook Live up with these words. Don't feed the wildlife. Don't bribe them. Don't manipulate them.
Don't give them the shiny trinkets.
Don't make their life about earning the shiny trinkets that keeps them in such a small world that they don't know who they really are. They don't know who you really are as a parent, and they don't know who God really is. And in takeaway number 2, we said our relationship with them gets to focus on building trust and loving them well. Next week on Facebook Live, and the 3rd part in this Why Won't My Kids Just Behave series is going to be, what does it mean to love our children well, practically speaking? I'm excited about that one, so join us next time.
Too.
In the meantime, if you were thinking about joining us in one of our online mini courses, We did a Facebook Live recently inviting you to join us on Trading Toxic for Healthy and our relationships at home. It's not too late. We're going to be discussing that, everything, the videos and the readings in that class the whole month of November. So jump in now. Go to janetnewberry.com. Go to the online courses page. Scroll down. I think it's the last little mini course listed, Trading Toxic for Healthy and our relationships at home. And join us.
Yeah, we're looking forward to you joining us.
Yeah. So have a good week, and it's good to be together again. So glad to see so many of you on the screen with us. That's always fun.
Yeah. See you next week. Thanks, folks.
There is great hope.